Hitler's last days and death. Hitler's valet, Lieutenant Colonel Heinz Ling, recounted Hitler's last 10 days. Adolf Hitler was a dictator responsible for the deaths of more than 50 million people worldwide and the genocide of 6 million in the Holocaust. Hitler, who led his own country to destruction, spent his final days in a bunker, which has always attracted attention. Films were made, books were written about these 10 days. In fact, the secrets of these 10 days were primarily illuminated by the accounts of his private valet, Heinz Ling. Russian forces had completely surrounded Berlin and were now bombarding it with artillery shells. Hitler and his staff spent their last days in the bunker beneath the Chancellery building, shaken by these artillery barrages. The war that ravaged the entire world, leading to the deaths of millions, was now in the skies and streets of Berlin. Russian soldiers were gradually seizing the city. During those days, Hitler summoned his valet Ling. He first said, "I want to relieve you of your duties, return to your family." This was a method Hitler used to test the loyalty of those around him. At first, Ling thought he would regain his freedom. But then he gave Hitler the response he expected: "Whatever the future holds, I still want to stay by your side." "I expected no other answer from you," Hitler said, listing his instructions. "There is nothing else to be done, Ling. Eva Braun and I have decided to die together. Your duty, and the order I give you, is to ensure our bodies are burned. After I die, I don't want anyone to see me or recognize me. Provide some petrol. Wrap our bodies in blankets, soak them in petrol, and then burn them. Burn all of my personal belongings as well." In fact, Hitler's close circle advised him to leave Berlin many times. But he refused. The bloody dictator's real fear was falling into the hands of the Russians. He didn't want to share the same fate as his Axis ally, the Italian dictator Mussolini, who was hanged upside down and dragged through the streets. According to Ling, such an end terrified Hitler. He no longer trusted his army or his commanders. One day when the artillery fire momentarily ceased, Ling took Eva Braun, who was feeling suffocated in the bunker, out for some fresh air. As they wandered among the ruins of Berlin, Braun turned to him and said, "If a miracle doesn't save us and the day comes when we die with the Führer, I want to be his legitimate wife." After this conversation, Hitler summoned Ling and instructed him to prepare for the marriage ceremony with Eva Braun. The wedding ceremony took place in the late hours of the night. 16 hours later, Hitler bid farewell to those around him. Upon Eva Braun's request, Goebbels and his wife Magda, who met with Hitler, couldn't persuade their leader. These were their last meetings. Before committing suicide himself, Hitler had his beloved dog killed. This dog, named Blondie, was poisoned near the bunker. The other dogs were also shot. Hitler's final days were also depicted on the silver screen. The film Downfall, directed by Oliver Hirschbiegel, was nominated for an Oscar. The film depicted life in the bunker with an impressive cinematic language, also showing the battles in the streets of Berlin. Let's listen to the last moments from Ling. "I followed Hitler to the map room along the corridor. I asked if he had any wishes. He reminded me of his orders to carry them out, and if possible, to get away from Berlin. I shook his extended hand. Then, as I always did, I saluted him." Ling described the painting in the room where Hitler committed suicide as follows: Hitler's body was lying on the bed as if sitting. There was a small hole on his right temple, and blood was streaming down his cheek in a thin streak. The pistol was lying where it had fallen from his right hand. The only woman he valued, Eva Braun, was next to him. There were no visible wounds on her face. She seemed as if she had fallen asleep. She had swallowed a poison capsule. Ling wrapped the bodies in blankets. On Eva Braun's arm, there was a diamond-studded watch, gifted by Hitler. They poured gasoline over the bodies. The wind kept extinguishing the match. They made a torch from newspapers. As soon as they lit the torch, flames burst forth and were extinguished. Only the clothes burned. Hitler's bodyguards moved the bodies to another location to burn and bury them. Ling burned Hitler's other belongings. It's known that the Russians found the charred remains of Hitler's body and identified him by his dental records. While trying to escape from the bunker, Ling was captured by Russian soldiers. The Russians learned that he was a lieutenant colonel and Hitler's valet in his private guard. Ling and Gunch were taken to Moscow on a special plane. A report was prepared from their accounts for Soviet leader Stalin to read. This report was published in 2005 under the name Hitler Book. Ling was sent to a camp near Sverdlovsk in the Urals. He stayed there for 11 years. According to Ling, Hitler was a tea enthusiast. He wasn't as opposed to alcohol as portrayed, but he preferred to drink tea at parties and celebrations. On April 20th, at a birthday celebration held shortly before his suicide in the bunker, while guests were served champagne and coffee, he was drinking tea.